So, Rory, you are an architect from HTA, and you have an experience now in modular off-site since 5, 6 years or something? 10 years. And do you know how many modules you have been drawing and... About 7,000. 7,000 modules déjà réalisés. So can you explain what's different for an architect to work with this new approach, this new mindset, off-site and modular? Thank you very much, Rory.
Thank you. Thank you, Pascal. So good afternoon. As Pascal said, my name is Rory Bergin. I'm an architect. I'm a partner in a large design practice based in the UK. We have been working on off-site projects for the last 10, 12 years now. And over that period, our involvement in the sector has grown substantially. So it's now about 1/3 of our practice workload. We have 200 people, and so most of those people have worked on an off-site project in the last couple of years. So we've heard a lot about the advantages and some of the issues around modular design. One issue I would just highlight for the clients in the room that we haven't heard already, and that is that if you set out to do the project this way, you also have to expect to change your own internal processes. So if you change the design process to a factory-led or DFMA-led process, you also have to recognize that you yourselves will have to change as well. Because there's no point in setting up this whole system of manufacturing, and then if you fail to make a decision in time, and then you miss the slot in the factory. So if you're a client, this will require you to make changes and not just everybody else. So we've heard a lot already about the advantages. One advantage here I would highlight that we've seen is on the commercial partnerships. So we as a practice have been working with a particular developer and manufacturer partnership now, and we're on our 10th building. And we've never sued each other. Now, I don't know what the construction industry is like in France, but traditionally in the UK, at the end of a project, we generally fight over money. And then we might not work together for a couple of years until we forgive each other or settle the money. So we're on our 10th project, and we've never argued about money. So that tells you something about the sort of shared will that comes from working this way. It's quite a transformation. This is some research we did of our own work. So there are two projects. The grey one is an off-site project, and the white project is a traditional project. So from left to right is our production stage of design information, and then on the right-hand side is the site stage. So what it shows is that it takes about the same amount of time, maybe a little more, to design the manufactured building. But then once we're finished and the drawings go to the factory, we can then move on to another project. Whereas with the traditional project, I don't know again whether it's the same in France, but with a traditional project in the UK, we spend a lot of time redesigning. Usually making the building a little worse, not making it better. So I see some nods around the room from the architects. So, you know, it's just wasted time, and it's wasted expensive time. It's wasted professional time. So we spend 10 times more on a traditional project in the site stages than we do on an off-site manufactured project. And if we're spending that time, clients are spending that time, lawyers are spending that time, etc., etc., etc. And none of it's productive. So here's one we prepared earlier. So this is Apex House, and you've already seen this in one of the earlier speakers' slides. So we started work in April 2015. We got planning permission a year later in March 2016. We started on site in November 2016, and we opened the building in August 2017. So that's 2 years, 4 months from the first sketch to handing over the keys of the building. Normally, with a traditional project, just the construction phase could easily take 2 years, 4 months of the same size. So we've managed to design and build the building. Now, this was our 5th project with the same team. So everybody knows what they're doing. The designers know the system. The contractor knows the system. The manufacturers know the system. And in this case, the planners knew the system because this was the 4th building in the same region with the same planning authority. So everybody knew what they were doing, which is why we were able to do it that quickly. But it's an interesting demonstration of how the construction industry can actually operate when everything is going smoothly and when we're not arguing with each other. And this is 500 student bedrooms delivered a year earlier than a traditional project could be. So rental for a student bedroom in London is £150 per week minimum. So you can calculate pretty quickly what the value of that extra year of rental income is for the project. So whether or not volumetric is cheaper or more expensive, in this case, doesn't matter. It's the time that matters. So for our second project, which is James has just mentioned, so this one is just topped out the other day. So this is 44 stories of modules. The modules, as you can see on the left, started to arrive in April, and 44 stories completed by October. Now, we spent 6 months preparing the site and building the cores before that, but still, 44 stories, 540 apartments in that period is quite astonishing. There is still work to be done to finish the facade and to finish the corridors and so on, but we're expecting the building to be open in May of next year. And again, at rental incomes of about £1,500 per month per apartment, it doesn't take a genius to figure out how valuable that is. So that's an example of a prefabricated module being craned into position. You've seen others already from Aralee's slides. This is a student room. It's finished inside. The bed is in the room. Everything's painted. Everything's ready to go. The only thing that needs to be connected are the services. So you can see the corridor is less finished. The service connections need to be made in the corridor. But everything inside that box is finished and ready to go. And the same slide from Aralee. So that's 3 of our buildings in close proximity to each other delivered over about a 10-year period. All of them delivered using the same factory, the same system, with different cladding systems. So there's terracotta tile, there's GRC, there's aluminium rain screen, there's some render. So from an architectural point of view, we don't see much, we don't see many disadvantages in terms of our design freedom and flexibility, provided that we understand from the beginning what it is we're going to be designing for. And then we've heard already that it's much more sustainable. Our research suggests it's about 50 to 60% less embodied carbon in the construction coming out of the factory. And then we've got the benefits, as James was pointed out, of the earlier rental income. Aralee, I've got a better slide now, so feel free to borrow this one too. So generally speaking, most of our work is on number 5 or 6 here at the right end of the spectrum. We are doing some work with using panels and pods at 3 and 4, because some clients are not ready to decide early enough how they want the buildings to be designed. Also, some of them want to leave the flexibility to change their minds a little later. And some of them recognize that at the moment, if they're building very big projects, even in the UK, there aren't that many manufacturers capable of delivering a large project. So the Tide Vision team, so Tide Construction and Vision Modular Systems, which are sister companies, they're one of the few who are capable of delivering a very large project, but they act really as a developer and delivery team. So they find the opportunities themselves. We design the projects with the system in mind. They build the projects and then sell them to Greystar or to another investor. So they're not really available as a contracting team for a client to build a project. There are other manufacturers who are, but it's not a large number, and there are very, very few who have the competence to build very tall buildings using the system. However, I think the example that we've seen and the examples from the other speakers show that there is the technical knowledge in the market now, and I think more importantly for other people in the sector, they are seeing these examples and then realizing, yes, this is possible, it can be done, the structural models can be developed, the regulatory approvals can be gained, etc. So showing these examples to people makes us feel as though the market is only going really in one direction. You've already seen sort of examples of that. One of the things that we do see, and we expect to see more of, is that some of these manufacturers are starting to collaborate, because they realize it's very expensive and difficult to build a factory to make everything in the factory. So as Henry was pointing out, in their process, they're working with multiple manufacturers of frames and of internal systems, and then putting them together to deliver buildings. So I think we will see more of that behavior where groups of manufacturers collaborate, a bit like the car industry, again, so that not one manufacturer is making everything. It means they can deliver more product through their factory, and also reduces their risks, because they might have multiple supply chains for things like bathrooms or kitchens or standard utility stores and so on. It's not all about high-rise, so we've done some work with manufacturers looking at customization, and I suspect the next speaker is going to talk a little bit about that, so I won't really continue. But one of the things that we expect to see happening to facilitate the sales market is that this link between digitization and manufacturing and customization will happen, where design decisions can be made quite late on in the manufacturing process and still delivered to site quickly. So it's a bit like when you're buying your car. These days you can make very many different choices. And there is one manufacturer in the UK currently selling homes with a high level of customization and still managing to prefabricate them. We have worked, as I said, for 10 years, so we understand that there are scales of complexity for clients to deal with. Not everybody is prepared to go to the maximum level, and sometimes people want to go part of the way. I suppose the advice we would give to clients is that you have to look at what the benefits are. So for people like Greystar, the benefits in financial terms are very obvious, so it makes sense for them to go all the way. For other clients, the benefits may not be so obvious in terms of finance. There may be other benefits in terms of quality or maintainability or the circular economy. So other options may suit other clients better. So it's just important to think about what's the driver for the direction you're going in quite early on in the process. And then not every building type is suitable for every type of construction system. So things like fire regulation, acoustic performance, wind speed, wind loads, etc., all have an impact on what system is appropriate to the building typology. And because of the Grenfell fire in the UK, we're now become really very risk averse, and very little combustible materials are allowed in the building envelope now in the UK. So we've all had to make a lot of design changes to buildings in progress, and some of the systems that we were hoping to use a lot more of are now going backwards, which is sad. And I think, and I'm hoping that over the next couple of years we can recover some of that lost ground, particularly in the use of timber construction and CLT in larger scale projects. So that is a sort of list of projects. I think 3 of them are now owned by Greystar, and so it's a mixture of student accommodation, hotels, and residential development. And interestingly, looking ahead, most of the interest is coming from the private rental market, whereas a few years ago, most of our work was in the student accommodation market. So George Street in Croydon, as I've said, so it's a twin tower project, 44 and 36 stories. We build the concrete cores first, because that provides the sort of stiffness and wind resistance to the structures. It's a very complex facade made in Austria. It's a terracotta, glazed terracotta facade system. And each of the 2 buildings is treated slightly differently in terms of facade treatment. A lot of amenity spaces, because for private rental, it's usually part of the building offer. A fully integrated BIM process, so between the structural engineer, the cladding system, and the architecture. And then, a complicated site. So a lot of work in the foundations, complicated local services, right beside major transport junction. So it's one of these projects which would have been very difficult to deliver using traditional methods, because the site would have been taken up with a lot of the site accommodation. So one of the things that modular does is it takes most of that site accommodation off the site and puts it in the factory. So typically you would have 20 to 40 staff on site building one of these buildings, while you've got 200 to 300 people in factories making the components. So the sort of the welfare and the storage, etc., you need on site is much, much less. And that means that some of these very complex, tight urban sites can be developed in an affordable way, where they're extremely difficult and expensive to develop in a traditional way. The particular nature of the site meant too that the cores had to be connected, because as the modules were built, the cores would still move in the wind. So to prevent the cores from moving apart from each other and ripping the modules, the cores were joined so that they operated in a single structure. And you can see there on the right, about 2 months ago, you can see the process as well, that we use mast climbers. So on each facade there is a mast climber at the top, which is dealing with waterproofing and fire protection. And then at the bottom you've got the second mast climber working in parallel, which is assembling the cladding on the building. And that's the building as it was a couple of weeks ago. So you can see the mast climbers near the top, working very quickly to install the facades. Some details of the different facade treatments. And then very quickly some of our previous projects, which I don't think I have time to go through particularly, but these just serve to illustrate the sort of scale of the projects and the quality of the finished build. So there is no compromise as far as we're concerned in terms of design quality, and there's no compromise in terms of build quality. What there does need to be, though, is an educated process of design to make sure that all of that can be enabled, and that the designer and the manufacturer and contractor are not fighting each other, that we're all working together in a concerted approach, that we all understand the process and we understand the constraints and limitations from each other's processes. So we're very excited about it. We can only see good things coming from it. Very interesting projects, both in the UK, hopefully here in France, and in Hong Kong currently. And we only see this as being a bright future, a better way to work, cleaner, safer, healthier. In the long run, we expect it to be cheaper. It isn't just yet, but that's from where we sit, that's all to do with scale. When we get bigger factories, more production, the costs will inevitably come down. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rory.